My name is Randall Eggert. This class is Grammar and Stylistics. It's about writing clearly.
Punctuating the end of a grammatical sentence. 10 ways. This video is adapted from the appendix or an appendix in Williamson Bissop's Style 10 Lessons in Clarity and Grace. So what we're doing relies on the notion of a grammatical sentence. I've talked about grammatical sentences in other videos. I've got a video on sentence structure, and I also go over it when we talk about punctuation, writing versus speaking. So what we're looking at here is punctuating the end of a grammatical sentence. There are 10 ways that we can do this. The most obvious way, the least marked way, is just to end it with a period or a question mark or an exclamation point. I'm going to focus on periods just because I think it's more straightforward. Another possibility, a little more marked but not terribly marked, is to use a semicolon. So a semicolon most of the time represents a soft period. It usually represents the end of a grammatical sentence. So when readers come to a semicolon, they expect that it delimits where one grammatical sentence ends and the next begins, in the same way that a period. The big difference between a semicolon and a period is that a period, of course, ends a punctuated sentence, where a semicolon does not. So the punctuated sentence continues. Another common way to end one grammatical sentence and then begin the next is to have a comma and then a conjunction. So a conjunction could be and, but, yet, for, so. Another possibility, a little more marked, is to end with a period and then begin the next punctuated sentence with a conjunction. So of course that conjunction, whether it's an and or a but, needs to begin with a capital letter. Now, some of you may have been taught at one point that you shouldn't begin a punctuated sentence with and or but. That rule is nonsense. It's perfectly fine. It might be more marked, but it's just a stylistic choice. Another possibility, and this one is more marked, this is a rather unusual case, would be to use a semicolon followed by a conjunction. So there, again, we've got one punctuated sentence, but here, instead of using the comma, which would be the unmarked way to do it, you use a semicolon. And I'm going to leave it to you to think of reasons why you might do that. Another possibility is to just simply have a comma. I should warn you, though, that this one many readers will consider to be ungrammatical. This is in fact called a comma splice. Another possibility would be to have no punctuation at all. Have one grammatical sentence, a conjunction, and then another grammatical sentence. Again, that's fairly marked, and some readers may find it to be objectionable. They might consider it to be ungrammatical. However, there are some reasons why you might opt to do that. I'll leave that again for you to think about. In what situations is a writer justified to use that? Another possibility is a colon. A colon is a fairly special case where the punctuation itself represents a meaning. The punctuation there seems to suggest that what follows is an example or it is an elaboration of what was just said. It somehow represents what came before it. So it could represent something akin to e.g., that is, for example, or it could be akin to i.e., that is, that is. And then there's the dash, which isn't so unusual, even though we put it as number 9, but it is a little different in that it seems to be a more flexible piece of punctuation. It can be used in all sorts of different positions. It can substitute for commas, can substitute for semicolons, for not so much for periods, but for semicolons or commas. It seems to also suggest a certain amount of offhandedness. For the reader, it's going to feel as though the writer just was like kind of thinking as they were writing, and they thought, oh yeah, and I wanted to add this, which is very informal feeling. It feels more like extemporaneous speech. Now, it may be very carefully crafted. Many writers will do that intentionally to give their writing that feel of something more spontaneous, of something more informal. And then finally, we've got parentheses. So parentheses can bracket off an entire grammatical sentence. Again, what we're talking about here is separating one grammatical sentence from another. And what we find is you can have a grammatical sentence and then still within the same punctuated sentence include a parenthetical grammatical sentence. I'm going to leave it to you as an exercise to identify examples for each one of these. So in each case, then I'm going to want a grammatical sentence separated with one of these 10 ways. So ending that first grammatical sentence and then have a second grammatical sentence. So that's the exercise I want you to try to get familiar with these different ways of punctuating the end of a grammatical sentence.